We are very, very pleased to be joined by a very special guest here in the locker room, and that is the two-time Super Bowl winning quarterback, Hall of Honor quarterback, soon to be Canton wearing, yellow jacket, gold jacket wearing Ben Roethlisberger joining us now. Ben, thanks very much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, sometimes I was like a coach too, so I'll take that.
Obviously conflating the two because I'm eager to ask you what your sort of first impressions were when you heard that Mike McCarthy was going to be the head coach of the Steelers.
Yeah, obviously that's a hot topic because I got my phone's blown up the last couple of days about people wanting me to talk about it. And I talked about it in depth last night on our podcast, and I actually talked about it a week ago when the search was kind of ongoing, when there were a bunch of names being thrown around, and I kind of said that part of me would be fine getting this kind of young, up and coming, hot shot, kind of unproven to a certain sense, a head coach, a candidate, a coordinator coming or something like that. But the name that I actually threw around, was Mike McCarthy, and I'm like, I liked the hire. I would like the hire back then, and nothing's changed. I think it's a great hire. I know that it's drawn mixed emotions and mixed bags amongst Steeler fans and the talking heads and this, that, and the other. But personally, I like the hire. I really do, and I'm not just saying that. I think it's smart for a few reasons. I mean, I think obviously there's something to be said about a Pittsburgh guy. I know that's not going to win you games necessarily, but he understands what it is to bleed black and gold. Like I know he's coached elsewhere, but you're telling me that deep down inside him, he didn't always have black and gold run through his veins a little bit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's something there, and I know fans kind of want this, like, let's just like wipe the slate clean, start over. But I think if fans would really like check themselves after like the emotions go, I think they still want someone that has a little bleeding of the black and gold. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? What I'm kind of getting at there?
Absolutely,
yeah.
It does.
And honestly, that was again. Is it going to win games? Probably not. But I used the analogy last night on my podcast. Like, I love the fact, like, so Miami of Ohio, right? My alma mater. Like, I wanted them to hire a Miami guy because he's not using it as a stepping stone. He loves it. He wants it to be there forever. Like Mike McCarthy, you could tell in his introductory press conference, like this is a big deal for him. And I know people will say, well, it's a head coaching job with the Steelers. It's a big deal for anybody. Yeah, but there's just something there to it. You get a guy with a lot of heart. And I've used this analogy a million times. I'll take a lineman, and Max, you appreciate this. I'll take a lineman with less talent and more heart than more talent and less heart. And people go, well, why? Because there's something that you can't quantify. You can't gauge heart. And Mike McCarthy has heart for this team, this city, this organization, Lombardi's, and there's something about that. I'm just telling you right now.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, Seven. And great to have you on the show, man. Great to have you on the show. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, you too.
I wanted to ask you this, and I think this was something this is the departure from an old, right? I mean, we're getting an offensive-minded coach. We haven't had that, right? We were in the process.
Hallelujah.
Right. Yeah. And even when we went through our transition, right, from BC to Mike T, we were like, oh, well, maybe there's an offensive coach in there that will care about us, and we won't be the step kids in the room. What does that mean? You think to anybody on the offensive side of the ball, knowing that your coach kind of comes from that side of the focus?
Yeah, I think that was my other reason when I spoke about it a couple weeks ago, and one of the reasons I like this hire. It's just time to score more than 6 points in a playoff game. And if Steeler fans are like, wait a second, I don't like this hire. Well, don't you want to score some points? I understand this team in this city will always bleed defense and running the ball. But at some point, you got to keep up with the Joneses. You got to start scoring some points. And it doesn't mean that you're taking anything away from your defense. So that's the other reason I like this hire. And I would use this analogy if I ask you guys. I'll ask you two this question. And this is a question I would pose to fans. And I don't want people, as I pose this question, I don't want people's knee-jerk reaction. I want you to think about it. So if you were going into a game or a season, say it's a Super Bowl or it's a full season, you had a veteran quarterback that you were excited about, and all of a sudden that quarterback retired, got hurt, couldn't play that year. And all of a sudden it's like, do you want to go get a quarterback that has maybe never played quarterback in the NFL? Young, could have some great talent, but he's unproven. You just don't know. You might get a stud, but you just never know. Or would you rather have a quarterback that comes in that's a veteran guy, that's proven, that's won somewhere before, he's got experience, he knows what he's talking about, and that's who you want as your quarterback? That's my question I would pose, and that's what we have right now in the coaching situation.
I think it's an interesting way of looking at it, Ben, for sure. One of the other things that Mike McCarthy's reputation tells us is that he's very good at working with quarterbacks, developing quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about the importance of developing the room, and when you look at, Cooper Rush, for example, obviously not Dak Prescott, superstar talent ability, but he had a great record with Cooper Rush as his starting quarterback. You obviously were a young quarterback in the league at one time as well. How important is that development aspect and relationship between a coach and a quarterback?
It's huge. And even more so, which I think and assume, knowing Mike McCarthy a little bit, looking at his track record, because I think this is where people need to also kind of like take a breath. I'm not going to say relax, because that's Aaron's thing. I'll say take a breath. Is that I believe that Mike McCarthy, and he's kind of has a little track record of this, is he's going to bring in some great coaches to coach, right? Like he's had I think he'll bring in a defensive coordinator that he can just kind of say, hey, that's your defense. Like, I'm not going to micromanage your defense. I'm going to focus on the offense. I think and hope that he'll bring in a young offensive coordinator and, to kind of work together. I mean, look what he did with, Kellen Moore, right? Didn't he hit Kellen Moore was his OC in Dallas, went to Philly, now head coach. Like, he's not opposed to bringing in young guys. So I think we have a chance to get the best of both worlds. I think we get a veteran coach in Mike McCarthy who has a track record of working with quarterbacks, a la, Aaron Rodgers potentially for another year if we want, or, knowing how to work with guys. But I think he'll bring in some young guys to also help with the coaching situation. Mike McCarthy seems like a coach that is not opposed to being having smarter or good ideas in the room. I think, and that's very important. You talked about it, Max, when Mike T came in. What made Mike T and that team so great was that he turned the offense over to a great mind in Bruce Arians, and he let Dick LeBeau run the defense. Those are super smart football players that he let do his thing. And I don't know who McCarthy's going to bring in as his DC and OC and things like that, but I could see him. I think it'd be great if he brought in a veteran defensive coordinator that doesn't have head coaching aspirations and said, hey, listen, this is your defense. You go ahead and do it. I'm going to focus mostly on the offense. Let me know when I need to challenge something or call timeout.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's also why you bring in a veteran coach, right? Because that fear of jumping, of trying to leapfrog the head man. I mean, we saw that in Cleveland on Hard Knocks, right? It was, you saw the coaches like trying to fight to be the head coach when there's already a head coach. And I think for Mike McCarthy, like you said, bringing somebody in that's going to challenge you in a good way and have a different, fresh perspective. We talked about the coordinators, but in your mind, when you look at kind of assembling this team and how he's going to go about the roster of those guys, I mean, if you're looking at the attention after the coaches, what are you paying particularly interest into for Mike McCarthy after he gets the coaches in place? What's your thought process about what he should focus on?
Like I said, for the team for next year?
Yeah, for the personnel decisions or that type of direction. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, I kind of mentioned this last night too. I would always, there's two schools of thought here. Like, okay, with Mike McCarthy being here, I think that definitely gives Aaron Rodgers more, like it perks his ears to potentially come back, right? Which I don't think is the worst thing in the world. I think he, and he'll know this offense. I think that's huge. So I think there's one school of thought. If Aaron comes back, then I think that gives you another year to kind of work with Will Howard, which I'm a big believer in Will Howard. I think that he needs to get a chance. There's just something in him I see. He's just, I think Pittsburgh's going to love him. Like, he's blue collar, he's tough, he wants to win, he's got a desire for this city. I just think that could be really something that could be interesting. I think it really hurt him last year, obviously, with the injuries and not getting the preseason reps that he could have got. And then obviously a game, was it the Bears game, I think, when Aaron didn't play, all reps that he could have got. So that's unfortunate. But if Aaron comes back, it's just another year that Will can learn behind Aaron. Now, if Aaron doesn't come back, I think I have no problem with Will Howard being the guy this year. But I'm a big believer. I think a lot of teams want to put a quarterback in and then build around the quarterback. I would go the opposite direction. I would like to build a team and then stick a quarterback in it, so that you kind of what happened for me. We had a really good team, Max, when we came in, a lot of veteran guys, offense, defense, and I just got kind of stuck in it, which was great. I would love, and I think there's a lot of great pieces on this team. I would always focus on line. I think that's so important to have, linemen. And I think, you could probably speak more to this, Max, than I could, but I liked the way the line looked at the end of last year. I think there's some really good pieces. And like Frazier, McCormick. I think I'd bring Isaac back if I could for a year or two, because he brings that, Charlie Batch said it last night, that Ramon Foster-ish kind of veteran presence and smarts. But I would always, I think if you can really get a good line, I think having depth at line, if there's a stud, if there's a guy in there, and I'm not talking about a guy, okay, this guy looked good at tackle for 1 year, or this guy was a great 1 year player. Like, no, go get me a veteran proven guy. I love the center at Indiana. Now, I know we have a good center, but I don't think you can have enough interior linemen. Put him at guard or maybe, whatever. But I just think you got to go O-line. And then the other thing that I would potentially talk about is if there's someone available and if you had to move up a couple spots, because you have a lot of draft capital, is I would think about a game-changing secondary player. I always hate to say this, but a Troy Polamalu-esque player, right? A guy that just can do something unique. I love the safety at Ohio State Downs. I just think that, is there a player out there that we could put in the back end that maybe then we can move Ramsey to corner, or is it a corner that we can keep Ramsey at safety? Like a game-changing type secondary player. Those would be the two areas I'd focus on first. And then obviously I'd try and focus on a receiver at some point. And if you can't keep Gainwell, then I'd get a running back. But if you can keep Gainwell, which I think would be important, especially if you're going to a West Coast system, a guy like Gainwell, Charlie Batch said it last night on the show, will be huge in a West Coast style offense. So if you can keep Gainwell, which should be important, then you don't need to worry about running back.
I think, Ben, you're seeing a lot of interesting stuff. And by the way, hopefully they'll develop Roman Wilson at receiver after 1 full year. He kind of fell off, looked like he was coming on in the middle of the season. They still have Caleb Johnson at the running back position. But, I think the national perception and some local perception is that this is an aging roster, in part because their biggest name guys are older players, Cam Hayward and T.J. Watt and Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Rodgers. But I see this as a team that just won an AFC North title. And like you said, if you make some judicious moves, you have some money in free agency, you have a lot of draft picks that are at your disposal, you could put a pretty solid team on the field. I think more solid than outside observers might think about this roster.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with you, Robin. I think the other thing that is a big deal is, okay, if you are going to get Aaron back, can you get him back for the right price? Because if not, you're in the situation where you're developing Will Howard on a rookie deal, which is, anytime that you can build a team while a quarterback is on a rookie deal, you have to do it. A la the Niners a couple years ago with Brock Purdy on his deal. Build this roster around having a quarterback that you don't have to pay a lot of money to. And so I'm with you. I don't think it's that far off, especially you look at you talk about TJ and Alex, and I don't want to put Alex as an older guy, but you got guys in there, but look who's behind them. You got Sawyer and Herbick, and you've got some players, and you spent some time on your D-line last year. So yeah, your bigger names are older, but I'm with you. I don't think that this is an older roster. I think this is a roster that's got some great roots. I think it's got some good that 3 to 5 year player. And that's why I think there's just a few spots that you could really fill until you're ready for this team to really potentially, I think, take off.
Hey, Ben, before we let you go, happy anniversary on that first Super Bowl championship. We had Bill Cowher on yesterday. You got Max Starks here helping to lead the way for that Willie Parker run. Your
That's
first
right.
Super Bowl championship. I'm sure great memories from this 20th anniversary for you.
Yeah, it was so neat. I mean, obviously getting celebrated this year during the season with a lot of the guys and seeing them. And it was so unique because a lot of those guys, you know, when we got there and won that Super Bowl, we were the young pups, Max and I. Like we were the ones looking up to all those guys and like, holy cow, these guys are so old. And now there's, you know, now you got the guys looking at us like, boy, you guys are so old. And so, you know, what neat memories. And it's so fun. It's fun to be out here talking with Max and you, Rob, obviously, and just talking from 20 years to now, how much different it could be, you know?
Ben, thank you so much for taking the time out. Really appreciate it. Love your insight. Love your work that you're continuing to do. And we thank you for being on with us.
Listen, it was my pleasure to be on here. Now, Max, you owe me a favor, and you have to come on my show.
I got to come to the basement, man. We got to crack a few brews on the air. Yeah, absolutely, man.
That's right.
I can't wait.
You. All right, guys. Good talking to you guys.
Thanks. See you, Ben. Appreciate it. Special guest, the great Ben Roethlisberger, joining us today in the locker room.